You are listening to Lighthearted, the official podcast of the United States Lighthouse Society. My name is Jeremy D'Entremont. Welcome. My co-host today is Michelle Jewel Shaw, chairperson of Friends of Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouses, a chapter of the American Lighthouse Foundation. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Jeremy, and hello to all of our listeners out there.
Today is March 20th, 2022, and this is episode 165 of Lighthearted. In a few minutes, we'll be hearing part two of a two-part interview with Terry and Jeri Cole. Terry was the park manager living at Fort Point Lighthouse in Maine for more than 30 years. And after that, we'll hear a conversation about youth programs at Tawas Point Lighthouse in Michigan. Before we get to that, has anything happened on this date in lighthouse history, Michelle?
Why, yes, it has, Jeremy. Something important happened 199 years ago today, on March 20th, 1823. On that night, the Northeast Pass Lighthouse in Louisiana went into service. It was on Franks Island at the mouth of the Mississippi River. It was the second attempt to build a lighthouse on Franks Island. The first tower fell apart before it could be completed. The 1823 lighthouse served until 1856. It was eventually abandoned and fell over into the water.
The Northwest Pass Lighthouse was replaced by the Pass Alutre Lighthouse in the Mississippi River Delta. The problem with the towers on Franks Island was that they were trying to build heavy structures on very soft clay that just couldn't support them. So, Michelle, let's do a quick recap to introduce part two of the interview with Terry and Jeri Cole.
Sure, Jeremy. Fort Point Lighthouse is in Stockton Springs, Maine, near the mouth of the Penobscot River. The light station was established in 1836, and the square brick lighthouse tower and attached keeper's house that stand there today were built in 1857.
Terry Cole was a keeper at Fort Point when he was in the Coast Guard for 3 years in the 1970s. He and his wife Jeri were raising two young daughters while they lived at Fort Point in the 70s. The lighthouse is within Fort Point State Park, and Terry became involved as a park manager while he was in the Coast Guard.
In 1989, long after he had left the Coast Guard, Terry and Jeri moved back into the light station, and Terry became the resident park manager. Jeri Cole also played an important role, helping to host visitors at the lighthouse and planning events. Terry retired last August after 44 years working for Maine Parks and Lands.
I had a great conversation with Terry and Jeri last January. We talked more about living at Fort Point and all kinds of weather, about the concerts and other events they held there, and about what they're doing in retirement, among many other things. So let's listen to part two of my talk with Jeri and Terry Cole now.
Once we were there, people would wonder what I was cooking, if there were samples available, and what time tea was. And then, you'd always get, the normal questions about where should I go? Where are the bathrooms? Can I use your bathroom?
Yeah.
We're desperate. Our little kids need your bathroom. And lots of little children toddling up that road, carrying buckets for sand. And, that would be, really a fun thing to watch. Yeah. Every question you could possibly think of. I was not employed by the park, but I was. And
Right.
People would need things. They would get locked out of their cars and need a coat hanger back in the day when that worked. Just many, many different questions. Where should they go to eat? If they can't eat at our house, where should they eat?
Yeah.
And,
Anybody just walk in the house?
Yes, we had that happen many times. You wouldn't, there were signs that said private, but many times we have people, either not see or
ignore.
Right. And they would start walking into the house, and it was, you had to be on your toes. You're never quite sure what was going to happen.
Yeah. I remember, I'm thinking of a couple of stories from other lighthouses, like one where the keeper's wife was taking a bath, and a tourist just walked upstairs and walked right into the bathroom while she was taking a bath.
Oh my
A little startling.
Yeah, luckily that didn't happen.
Yeah. And I remember at Portland Headlight, one of the keepers, I think it was a Coast Guard keeper in the 50s, said that a woman was staring out at the Casco Bay there, and she turned to him and she said, "Is that the Atlantic Ocean? I thought it would be bigger." That story. I'm sure there are some amazing things people said and
Oh,
asked.
yes.
Terry, we talked about the bell tower, the fog bell tower earlier, which is a very historic part of the station there. How did you kind of utilize that in your time there?
It's almost a one of a kind thing. Like you said, there aren't that many left. So it was, everybody had to go out and sit on it. There's a nice little porch on it.
Yeah.
And you can put your head in the bell. A lot of people like to stand up in the bell, and then you could take a rock and you could write things on it inside, and little graffiti and stuff like that. But the people were respectful, and for a number of years I had some displays inside and would have it open, and they could ring the bell by hand, and I had a replica of Stevens apparatus I built, and you could get the feel of how what that was like. And
it was his little museum.
Yeah.
It's basically what our job was, to make Fort Point accessible to the public in different ways.
Yeah, I thought it was great that the bell tower was open. I remember sounding that bell one time. I have a little video of the striker hitting the bell. It made a beautiful sound.
Yeah.
It's great that that bell that's there is it was a bell that was actually used there, right?
Yes.
Fog bell, yeah. Probably a typical, usually a slightly over 1,000-pound bronze bell. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's got such a beautiful tone, but I don't think the striker's there anymore. Is that right?
No, well, after they took out the Stevens was there for quite a while. I mean, I think into the late 1950s. But when they took that out, they had a little skeleton framework, and they had the hammer on it that it would come back. It would be pulled back, and a little motor that with a cam that came around and brought the hammer back, and then it let it go. And so it was that was the next thing, and that's still there.
That is still there, but it's usually kind of pulled inside, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
As I remember, the last times I've been there, it's not in place, so it's not quite as easy to. I imagine it'll get a little tiring hearing that bell going all the time.
After a while, when we were first there, we had the striker was there, and it just, kids just loved to not ring it once, but bang, bang. And finally I took it down, and then we had some kids. I worked at a tech school, and had the welding class make something where I could keep it there, just show what it looked like. And that worked well too.
Yeah. I'd just like to talk for a minute about the Flying Santa. It's something I've devoted a couple of episodes of the podcast to. It's something I've been involved with for a long time. The Friends of Flying Santa that does the Santa visits, Coast Guard stations mostly by helicopter these days. It's a tradition that started in mid-coast Maine in 1929. Bill Winkapaw, the pilot, started dropping presents out of his plane for lighthouse keepers and their families. As I said, the flights are now done by helicopter by the nonprofit Friends of Flying Santa. As a way of showing appreciation to the Coast Guard and Coast Guard families. And there are sometimes civilian stops as well as Coast Guard stops. And Fort Point, while you were there, was sometimes visited by the Flying Santa. What was the experience like when Flying Santa would come in by helicopter there?
Little history is Captain Mitchell was there at that in 1929, and Winkapaw, the pilot, actually he used the lights to get back to Rockland, and he did see Fort Point. That was one of them that helped get him back.
Yeah. Well, as I understand it, he certainly relied on the lights at night and in bad weather, and got to know some of the keepers personally. And that's a big reason why he started the flights. To show appreciation for them.
The Flying Santa was such a wonderful tradition that kind of heralded in, the holidays for us. At some point, usually mid-November, we'd get information. Quite often it would be Santa himself that would call us. George Morgan would call and say that when they were coming, and it was one of my favorite things when Santa would come, and we would figure out who we were going to invite. So it was our children, and at that point our grandchildren. And then we always included people from the town, people that, might need a little extra Santa experience. And so we would decorate the house, and we would decorate the yard, and then everyone would gather, waiting for Santa to arrive. And of course, there would be presents, but we'd have to, sneak the presents and, oh dear, Santa dropped his bag, But being out in the cold and all those little kids looking up in the sky and waiting, and just the anticipation, and then you'd hear the thumping in the background of the helicopter, and some sharp-eyed person would see a spot in the sky, and then the kids would go wild, running around and excited, and the helicopter would come closer and closer, and then quite often there'd be snow on the ground, and the snow would get all whipping around,
blizzard, real blizzard.
And then they'd land, and Santa would come out of the helicopter, quite often in a cloud of snow, like something out of a movie. And I would go and welcome Santa, and just kind of an in-between to make kids feel, okay, it's okay to talk to Santa,
Right.
And bring him over to the house. And
give him any pie? Do you have apple pie for Santa?
No, but I did make gingerbread men and hot chocolate. And Santa would sit in a special chair, and the children would have, a few minutes alone with him to get their little gift and sit on his lap or whisper in his ear. And then when we were all done, quite often the kids would break into Christmas carols, and Santa would, be cheered. And a few times Santa came in and had hot chocolate with us, but mostly he would have to be on his way, and all the children would wave goodbye to him, and then everyone would crowd into the lighthouse and have our hot chocolate and gingerbread men. It was just, I got goosebumps just talking about it. Santa was really wonderful. Great.
It is it's a great tradition. I've experienced it on the ground, at Station Portsmouth Harbor near where I live, with Santa coming in, and a couple other places, Portland Head, and I've also flown along with Santa all day one time on the Massachusetts flight. So it's so exciting seeing it from any angle. The pilots involved, everybody loves it so much.
Yes.
And I'll just put in a plug if people want to read more about the tradition, about what's going on now. The Friends of Flying Santa website, flyingsanta.org. Long and interesting history about that. Let's move on and talk about your daughter Amanda was married at the top of the lighthouse in 1995, right? Can you tell me about that?
She was married at the lighthouse. The ceremony wasn't performed at the top of the lighthouse.
Okay.
But it was in her plan that she was going to be married at the lighthouse, and she was going to hike her dress right up, and they were going to have pictures taken at the very top of the tower. So they might as well have been married up there.
Did she throw a bouquet off the top?
Gee, that would have been a great idea.
That must have been fun.
It was lovely.
You, as time went on, you had grandchildren, and I'm sure the extended family would visit there often, other family members. Did you often have family gatherings there?
Yeah, we did. I don't know if I've said this already, but it was, kind of when we came back, we always felt a certain sense of duty and hospitality to not only have our family there as much as possible, but also, to include the people in the town and the people on our road, and, just to share this experience with whomever we could.
Sure.
And so our daughters both were married, and then we had grandchildren, and we have 5 grandchildren total. And they spent a great deal of time with us there. They had their own bedroom with 2 sets of bunk beds and a trundle bed for the little one, and just many adventures and different things that we did, having them there for so much time. We of course went to the beach and played in the fort, and we had, it wasn't just summer either. We had snow fights outside in the middle. I remember one time they had, there was so much snow. We had just gotten a lot of snow, and we had 4 of the 5, and they were sledding outside in the moonlight with flashlights. It was wonderful.
And we did in the summertime, towards the latter part of when the kids were there, had movies projected onto the tower. It was kind of cool to watch.
Oh, wow. That's great.
The dragon in the lighthouse.
Pete's Dragon?
Pete's Dragon. Yeah, they loved that one. So that was pretty neat to do.
Yeah.
We also had our families, our extended families, and we would have picnics and brunches, and of course I'm always involved in cooking, and we would have a picnic down by the apple tree or out by the oak tree, the big oak tree that's there, or down in a spot where the garden was, down by the brick oil house. And then we'd have them over by the bell tower and in the little yard. And it's just a lovely place to share with people.
Definitely. I can't imagine it being any cooler than a little kid having their grandparents living in a lighthouse. I think that a lot of little kids that would love that. Both of you organized many events there over the years, including steel drum concerts for some years. It went on for, I think, the late 90s to 2014. Were those popular?
Yes, they were. We kind of fell into the steel drum business with our daughter, Amanda, took lessons and was part of the band.
Oh.
And the band, Flash in the Pan, is based in Blue Hill. And every Monday throughout the summer, they do benefit concerts. So they would do a concert, and then any proceeds from that would go to different charities. So through Amanda, we had the first concert there, and it was so much fun. The band came. I don't know how many were in the band at the beginning, but toward the end, I mean, there'd be like 30 or 40 people in that band. And I mean, just imagine the sound of that. And we would have them come back every summer, and sometimes we would have so many people. The park would be full, both sides of the road coming down to the park, the private road, that would be full of people. We'd have, we could have 1,000 people sitting outside under the stars, with their little blankets and their chairs. And the days that we'd have a concert, you could see, I'd be in the kitchen, of course. And because I fed the band, it was a little incentive to get them to come. I would make them a meal and also feed the neighbors, because they were going to be put out a little bit by having all this commotion. But as we'd be getting ready for the concert on that Monday night, that we could look over and see people coming across the lawn, setting up their chairs and trying to get a good spot. And then the band would come and set up by the apple tree and put their little awning up and tune up their instruments, and then take a little break and come eat their dinner. And as the night went on, as it got darker, things just ramped up, and the frenzy
Festive,
oh my gosh, it was just so, again, I've got goosebumps. It was just, people were so happy to be there and just dancing, and the children running around playing and hula hoops, and and then we would sell refreshments to make some money for different organizations. We raised money for the town and for the Boy Scouts. And at the end of our time there, we raised money for type 1 diabetes. And it was a significant amount of money that was raised, all due to the band being so generous with their time. But it was a magical experience.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
One of my favorite parts of the night was to avoid the crowds, but to walk through and just pick up on these conversations and with the different people. And I love to walk to the fort in the background, I had walked the berm and just look out and see this whole big area that I'd mow all the time, and it was full of people, and it just was a great feeling to see that, and we had no trouble at all.
No, it was lovely. It was a lovely time.
Yeah.
And there was one time when it was organized. We had the Flash in the Pan concert, but it was also the weekend of the
it was a tall ships thing. And
some anniversary with tall ships.
It was a big deal. Like all these tall ships sailed up and the concert was that night too, and the governor was there, and he came over, and Angus, Governor Angus King, and it was quite a night. It was quite a night, and of course the tall ships left later the next day. It was quite a sight, and
the tall ships actually came into the Penobscot River.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow. I wish I could have been there for that. I wish I could have been there for any of those concerts. It really sounds very, very nice. So you did other events there also, I think colonial reenactments and other things, right?
Yeah, there was several groups that were very thoroughly into their reenacting their time period. And they did all kinds of great activities, firing their muskets and cannons, and having the lifestyle of being at a campground for the colonial times. We had a number of those. We had the 250th anniversary of the fort there, and that was quite a big deal. And a number of those types of things. Whenever we do those events, we'd open up the lighthouse and take people up for tours. And
I was going to ask you about that. So I was there a number of times with various groups from the U.S. Lighthouse Society. For a while, I was doing cruises with American Cruise Lines and so on. Friends of Flying Santa, I think maybe at least once over the years, and you would open the tower for us. And one of the nice things about climbing the tower is that there's still an active fourth order Fresnel lens in there, and people get to see that up close and the beautiful view and everything. What did you enjoy about doing that, about opening the tower for people?
I think the people, I mean, they were very appreciative of it, and they had all kinds of great questions, and I just love talking about it. So I could get going on all kinds of different parts of it, and be up in the lantern room, and and then seeing that fourth order. I always tell them, enjoy the view, but take a look at this lens, because this is pretty special and stuff. So I think it was the people, the excitement about having the opportunity to go inside a lighthouse.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's always special. It always makes it more special for lighthouse buffs, especially when they get to climb the tower.
Yeah.
I'm sure you must have gotten people I know you couldn't keep it open all the time. People must have been asking all the time, but great that you opened it for groups. Mm-hmm.
Terry would give tours basically to anyone, and when we first came back, anyone could give us a call and, can I bring my family from California out to see, to come in the tower? And Terry'd be like, sure, come on, and any excuse to talk about the history of the area and the history of the lighthouse itself, was something that always made him really happy. I mean, he's done extensive research and has a lot on paper, and there may be some stories out at some point, but any excuse to interact with the community and just show people, share what is there, and it's just a wonderful experience.
Yeah, and our main goal, make it accessible as best you can, and that was a good way to do it. We'd put up signs, do promos, and we get a lot of people.
Yeah.
Well, it was obviously you enjoyed it, and you were always a great host there. I just thought of something I wanted to mention. I wanted to thank you. I don't know if it's one or both of you I should thank for planting some of the flowers you had on the grounds. Because some of my favorite pictures that I've taken of that lighthouse are with the flowers in the foreground. I sometimes would lie down on the ground, to get the flowers in the foreground in the picture. Yeah. So they're always real pretty in the summer.
Yeah, that was us. We had a lot of many Mother's Day and birthday gifts were, planted in the park.
Yeah.
And, it's hard to leave that stuff behind, but, it's still there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's still there.
Yeah, one time the Searsport Garden Club came over, and there's a little pocket of stones, and there's a path that was created for the tourists. And at the head of that path, they planted hundreds of what were they?
Daffodils.
Daffodils. Yes.
Daffodils. A big cluster of daffodils down by the oil house.
Yeah.
The little path down there.
I imagine school groups came to the lighthouse sometimes. And you, I think, Terry, you went out into the community to tell them about the lighthouse also? Is that right?
Yeah, we had a whole slideshow at the time. We had slides, and went out to school groups, any kind of historical societies, and did a lot of that for a period of time. It was a lot of fun too. Once again, they were all interested and had good questions and things like that, and I love doing it. And I had some really good pictures too, so it was a good way to present it.
And then in the spring and early summer, before school got out, he'd have to schedule the school groups that would want to come, and we'd have a couple hundred kids that would go up into the lighthouse tower. And we had a plan. We had plenty of chaperones, and then I usually helped Terry, and we would get 3 or 4 kids up at a time with adults at the front and the back, and getting them up into the tower. It was it made for a pretty long day. Poor Terry was really tired by the end of it, but the children it was just a great experience.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's always great getting local kids into their local lighthouse. It's such a important part of their history, and to learn about the fort, of course, also. Terry, I know you just officially retired very recently, just this past summer, right? Just a few months ago. And I'm wondering, what are you doing? What kind of things are you doing in retirement at this point?
I'm keeping pretty busy. We've built a house, and we've been working on it for like seven years. And we finally, my official day of retirement, we officially came here to live. We were here.
We slept here for the first time that night.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And it's a beautiful piece of property, and it's a wonderful little house. We've got so much to do. Right now it's winter out, and we'll get so much detail work inside, and I love it. And Jeri always makes sure that I've got something to do. I mean, it's and first time I think ever that we've had our own property, our own place, and I'm just working for us, and not all kinds of people. I love that too. People always love the grounds were kept good and mowed and stuff. But
that's great. That's great.
We've been working on this house for 5 years, and it's all but done. It's like Terry said, it's all those little projects that have to get finished up, and it is a very small house, so that has its own challenges. Our days are filled with little projects, and and then planning for the summer. We have gardens here. It's a nice, quiet little spot. It's interesting that it's just us now. For many years,
must feel really quiet.
Yes, for many years I always felt, and toward the end of our time in Stockton, I always resented a little bit the amount of work that Terry had to do, because it was time to retire. But now it's just he and I, and we just spend our days working on little projects and planning what we're going to be doing in the summer, and looking at wildlife, and remembering the things that we've done in our lives, and the lighthouse. We're expecting a big storm tomorrow, which has triggered like all these memories for us, because one of our favorite things was to look out the window and see the snow falling with the lighthouse and the tower in the back, the snow against that and swirling, and then the house shaking and, doors flying off, and which happens.
Wow.
We miss that, we miss a few things. We miss some of our neighbors who walked every day and who became kind of family. You could always depend on seeing them, and there are many little things that
Yeah. It must be so pretty in the snow.
It's magical.
Yeah.
And when Terry and I used to work at the schools, and we would know a storm was coming, and then we would wake up in the night and hear the foghorn.
Mhm.
And that was
Pretty good chance there's no school that day.
Yeah, right.
We missed that. The horn is, I think that it's only on demand now for the mariners. We really miss that.
I don't know about you there, but in my experience, since they switched to those Mariner activated horns, you almost never hear them anymore. When it's foggy, you almost never hear them.
No.
When it's sunny, you might hear it, somebody just showing their friend what they can do with their VHF radio, but even that is pretty rare.
Yeah, it's that actually was a big thing. Once the horn was automated, once they changed all that, we have missed that terribly.
Yeah.
The light being on, it's hard really to see that during the day that the light's on, and that part of the automation was pretty easy to take, but it's the foghorn that really gets you.
Yeah. Are you writing a book about the history of Fort Point, Terry?
I'm working on it.
I had a hunch you might be.
As you know, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I've edited and I've got so many drafts. I'm there. I'm pretty close.
We're going to whip that into shape.
Yeah.
Hope to hear more about that. I'd love to hear more about it, and look forward to seeing it when it's finished. So I have one final question. This is for both of you, and you, to some extent, I think you've both already answered this, but I'll give you one more chance if you want to add anything else. And this is for bonus points, okay? The question is, what did you like best about your years living at Fort Point Lighthouse and State Park?
Well, just being at the park, just being at the lighthouse was really, it was a dream, because, when we were first there, we were young and raising our family, and it was the first time that we had time together. And then coming back, there was that all over again. It was, just a concentrated amount of time that he and I were together there. And for me, it's really poignant, talking about it, and, seeing how, we grew, we lived our lives there. And we were young, and then we were middle-aged, and and now we're older, and we've seen it from many different sides. And I miss the foghorn. I miss the snowstorms, and the excitement of events there. We miss our neighbors, even not close neighbors, but people who would come daily and walk, and you establish a real rapport with people. We miss the people of the town, who were always very kind and welcoming to us when we first got there, and then when we came back, they're people we talk to on a daily basis. They're part of our lives.
Yeah.
And so there's certainly a bit that is kind of difficult to leave, but knowing now that we're on this phase of our lives is exciting too.
Yeah, it's not even real as far as living there and having a park at our disposal, more or less. I love walking the dog early in the morning. I was a very early riser, and we could go out and walk the paths, and sit down and on the beach, and she'd go swimming, get a stick, and walk down to the pier, just doing that, and that was to me awesome. I'm an early riser, and I got into a thing several years ago of doing sunrises. It would get a cup of coffee and make sure that it was a great place in the summer. You could watch the sun come up on the left side of the bell tower and then gradually over, to the right. And I've got hundreds of pictures of sunrises. It just was a kind of a magical time for me to a new fresh day and a rebirth kind of each day, and a cup of coffee, and just it more recently I would fall asleep.
Yeah.
But as just those things, it was really special.
I'm not an early riser, but I think living there would turn me into an early riser, maybe. But that sounds so special, everything you both talk about. And the time has flown by. I know so much more we could talk about. Maybe we can do it again sometime. But I want to thank you both again for both spending this time with me today, but for all your hospitality over the years. I just think of it as a special place myself, and had so many good times visiting there. So thank you for that. And again, thank you so much for your time today, and good luck in the new phase of your life with that beautiful new home you have there.
Thanks.
And good luck with the snowstorm tomorrow too.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have to make some foghorn noises just so we feel good.
Or bacon apple pie.
Yes, I'll have
Yeah, you're right. Have some apple pie and make some foghorn noises. That sounds like a good way to spend the storm. So thank you again, Terry and Jeri. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
An interesting side story is that a hotel called the Fort Point Hotel was built close to the lighthouse in 1872. The large hotel could accommodate 200 guests. Mostly wealthy people from Boston and New York City who arrived by steamboat. There were hopes that Fort Point would grow into a resort similar to Bar Harbor, but the hotel failed and it burned down in 1898.
Next, we're going to talk a bit about Tawas Point Lighthouse in Michigan, and this falls under the heading of one of our Be a Lighthouse segments.
In the segments we call Be a Lighthouse, we focus on people and organizations who are helping people in their communities in all kinds of ways. One of the ways an organization can be a lighthouse in the community is to provide programs and activities that enrich the lives of young people, and that's what we'll be talking about in this case.
I recently spoke with Laurie Perkins, who is the Southern Lower Peninsula Historian for the Michigan History Center. Under that umbrella is Tawas Point Lighthouse, which is located in Tawas Point State Park on the west side of Lake Huron in northern Michigan. We spoke about some ways the Michigan History Center and Tawas Point Lighthouse are enriching the lives of young people. Let's listen to my conversation with Laurie Perkins now. I am speaking this afternoon with Laurie Perkins, who is the Southern Lower Peninsula Historian for the Michigan History Center. Along with many other things, Laurie coordinates the Keeper program at Tawas Point Lighthouse, which we're going to talk about in a moment. Thank you so much for joining me today, Laurie.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I'm so happy to be talking with you again. I can't believe it. I was just looking back, and it was about almost exactly 2 years ago we spoke last time for the podcast.
Yes, that just flew by.
It sure has. 2 years have gone like nothing, although a lot's happened in those 2 years, but time does fly.
So true.
So today, what we're talking about today kind of fits in with our framework of a new segment we have on the podcast we're calling Be a Lighthouse.
Yes.
And it's a broad range of things that we're talking about under that topic. Of course, lighthouses often stand for hope and guidance and so forth. Mm-hmm. And one of the many ways people and organizations can be a lighthouse in the community is to help youth in various ways.
Yes.
So that's largely what we're going to talk about right now. So first of all, please tell me about the virtual lighthouse badge related to Tawas Point Lighthouse.
Well, it was a great opportunity. As we all know, COVID hit us in March of 2020. And in the spring of that year, I got a phone call from the Girl Scouts Heart of Michigan Council, and they were wanting to give a tour of the lighthouse for their Girl Scouts in the summer to receive a badge. And of course, we were closed for COVID, so we couldn't do it. But a young lady who's involved with that organization, Jacqueline Remmers, she and I put our heads together, and this big electric spark happened, and we decided we'd go virtual with a badge. It hadn't been tried before, but we thought, hey, we'll try this. So between she and I, we developed a program that lasted 1 hour, two 1 hour sessions over 2 days that introduced this troop of girls. There were about 10 or so. It was our test pilot group, to the lighthouse at Tawas Point. And we were fortunate in that the Friends of Tawas Point Lighthouse had just produced a virtual tower climb of the lighthouse. And it was a great opportunity to share that virtually with these girls, because they obviously couldn't go up the tower then. And we put it together with stories, and one of our volunteers in our main office here in Lansing, he loves Lake St. Clair there north of Detroit. And he had grown up on the waterways, and he knew boats. And he had hand carved a whole series of boats for us to talk about boats in the Great Lakes. So we used a schooner. It was a model maybe about, a foot long, and it had the sails and everything. So we used those models. He did a lighthouse too, to tell the story. And we used Child of the Sea, which was a book written by a young woman who was one of the first woman lighthouse keepers on Beaver Island. And her last name was Williams. And we excerpted some of that from the child's perspective. And then we made lighthouses. We took recycled material, cups and glue and stickers and everything. And we sent these materials to these girls as a kit. The Girl Scout Council paid for the shipping, collected the materials, and sent them to each participant along with their badge. So if the girls completed this 2-day session, they got to open their package, make their lighthouse, and they even sent a battery operated votive candle, so they had instant light in their lighthouse. Wow. And then their badge was included in the kit. It was a little triangle badge with a lighthouse on it, and it was great. And I tell you, that second night of making lighthouses, these kids had full concentration. It was a Zoom call. We'd have 20 girls on at a time, and just looking at those little faces, these girls are 7, 8, 9 years old, just intent on building these lighthouses. And they used so much creativity. It was great. And then we gave a little quiz, and I had a little PowerPoint about Michigan's lighthouses as well as Tawas. And so we had fun. And we had so much fun at it that the Girl Scout Council decided they would offer this on their website, and we were swamped. We had over 66 kids go through this program. They were from all over the United States. Even the Girl Scout Council in Michigan was stunned by the number of young girls that signed up for this program to get this badge. Kids that signed up from states that don't have lighthouses, like Colorado. I mean, I can't think. Can you think of a lighthouse in Colorado?
Not that I'm aware of. There might be a fake one in a parking lot somewhere, or something like that.
Right, but not a working one.
Yeah.
And but we had kids from Texas, from Florida, from Kentucky, Tennessee, Ohio, and about 50 girls from Michigan. But it was a lot of fun, and they enjoyed it. And we're hoping to bring it back again at some point. They did record it so that they can do it again without me, but it was fun.
Fantastic. It all sounds so great. So the virtual lighthouse tour you talked about, is that available online? Can everybody see?
You can go to the Friends of Tawas Point website, not the Facebook page, but their website, and you can click on virtual tour, and you can take a maybe 3-4 minute tower tour. And it's very cool because you can even hear their footsteps as they climb as the camera person climbs the tower. You can hear their feet hit the metal steps. So yeah, it's been great. We've used it in a lot of different ways in the last 2 years. So yeah,
well, obviously it's nice to get people to the lighthouse, but a virtual tour like that is certainly
right.
the next best thing.
It's easy to do. I mean, the tour was done on an iPhone, and so I would recommend it to all your members out there. If you haven't you haven't done the virtual tower tour yet of your lighthouse, do it,
Yeah.
and set it to music, and people will love it. They just will love it. They can watch it at midnight in their funny, fuzzy, bunny slippers.
Yeah, well, I completely agree. And quite a few lighthouse organizations have done things like that. Some have done sort of VR type tours, the type where you on your computer or your phone or whatever, you can click on the steps going up and look around at the view
Right.
by clicking on different things. Or you can do just a video version, or you can do both. But I think either or both are great things. Even if there wasn't a pandemic going on, it's a nice way for people who can't
Right.
get to the lighthouse to
Absolutely.
visit.
Who cannot climb the stairs. It's a great way to experience the lighthouse.
That's very true too. Not even some of the people who get to the lighthouse can't necessarily climb it, so it's a nice way of experiencing that.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't like heights,
Right. And there are those people too. I've certainly met a lot of those over the years. So what do you think the girls who took part in the virtual lighthouse badge program took away from it, would you say?
Oh, I think the funnest thing was introducing them all to each other and having them say their state name, and realizing that the world is bigger than out here in Michigan, and that you can meet people who have the same interests as you no matter what. And that was the funnest part. We did an introduction around, and they would say their state, and then I would ask them, do you think your state has a lighthouse? But the most fun memory I have is, not to pick on Colorado, but I was doing the hold up your hand, here's Michigan, here we are. And the young lady from Colorado said, I can't do that because my state is square.
Yeah.
What is this? She had never seen that before. Anybody hold up their hand and go, this is Michigan. But it's automatic for those of us that grew up in Michigan. People ask, where are you from? You just go like
that. Exactly. Yeah.
Or this way, depending on which way Detroit is, right?
Yeah. I guess the states from about the Midwest to the east are all irregular shapes, whereas to the west, they tend to be more regular shapes.
That's right. And that was her big revelation, that somebody could actually show their state on there.
Here in New England, I guess Cape Cod is a little bit along those lines. We talk about the elbow of Cape Cod, or the armpit of Cape Cod. I won't say which town that is. It's a little bit like that. So you mentioned that the program, you do have plans to continue the program in the future. Anything definitely in place at this point?
Not at this point, but I know that they did record the last session that I did with them. And so they're free to use that however they wish, and they can still do that.
Yeah.
But I know that Jackie wanted to bring the girls actually physically to the lighthouse this summer. So it may have been a short-lived thing, but if that's the case, then we've sort of retracted, because now only the group from Saginaw can come, and we've lost our outreach, So I don't know. I don't know where this is going.
Or maybe both, have the local ones come to the lighthouse, but do a remote program for others if they want to do it.
We haven't really got that in depth in talking about it.
Yeah. Well,
it's an opportunity for sure.
Absolutely. So let's just talk a little bit about the resident volunteer keeper program. At your lighthouse. Just without going into tremendous detail, I know there's a lot to it, but what is that program? How does that operate?
Well, this is an opportunity for folks to spend 2 weeks at Tawas Point Lighthouse. There is a fee this year for doing that, but you can learn all of that information on our website. But you get to be a volunteer keeper, which involves giving tours to the public. The first year, 2020, when you and I talked, I had over 1,100 applications to the program. It was huge. We ended up with 1,100, and we settled on 40 folks, and they went through the whole training. And of course, then we were closed. In 2021, we offered them the opportunity to be a host outside the lighthouse while living in the lighthouse. So it was kind of a hybrid. The keepers stayed in the keepers' quarters just as they would have on a regular visit. They were in their own bubble, so to speak. And then I had a tent and table outside that they put up displays in, and activities for kids outside during the summer. And we were able to bring back about 5 of those 10 groups that we had scheduled in 2020. So this year, the application is open now till February 11th. We're trying to get teams of 4. we're interested in people from all over the country, all backgrounds. You just have to be 18 years of age and able to climb that tower, and be a host. Be personable with the public and share your love of lighthouses with them. So we go through training. You don't have to worry about learning, big volumes of facts, but it basically is an afternoon every day except Tuesdays, and that's when our friends group come in and do the tours for us, so that keepers get a break, so to speak. So.
Yeah, well, it's a great program, and
yes,
you mentioned to me that the resident keepers, volunteer keepers, do some work with visitors in general, but
yes.
especially youth who come to visit.
Yes, they do. In fact, outside last year, we not only had the virtual tours ability on phones and iPads, but we also did knot tying. We did a color sheet. One of the keepers was a school teacher, and she had a science background, and so she brought a tray full of sand, and she poured water through it to show how the spit of sand formed for the light where the lighthouse was sitting. And so again, you can bring your skills and talents and background to the keeper program and use it out there in the public, and the kids loved it, and so did the adults. Frankly, we had these pre-cut pieces of cording and a sheet to learn to tie knots, and the keepers told me they had adults that would sit at the picnic tables and tie as many knots as the kids did. So and then they explained why it's important to learn to tie knots in order to survive out there at the lighthouse. You've got to be able to tie a good knot, or you might find yourself overboard.
Right.
So those are the kinds of things that we did.
And do you have any plans, anything specific as far, or it doesn't have to be specific? Do you think you'll be developing more programs for children?
I hope so. I think the ability to get back into the lighthouse, we're hoping we can get back into the lighthouse. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It may be a hybrid where if counts are high, we're outside. It may be the keepers are uncomfortable being inside. Because once we get to the top of that tower, it gets you can't social distance.
Right.
Up there. And so people will be wearing masks. So a lot of it'll depend on being flexible. But I'm hoping that we can get more kids into the lighthouse this year, as well as do some programs outside. And we could still be tying knots while people are touring the tower. So
sure.
It just depends. We're gonna keep it open, and we're gonna be flexible, and we want to keep people safe. That's our main goal. We don't want to get in the news for being a COVID situation.
Exactly. Well, so many lighthouse organizations all over the country are dealing with these same issues these last couple of years. And I think I think you use the word hybrid, I think a lot of us are aiming in that direction, where you just, you don't just do things one way.
Right.
It can change week to week.
Yes.
Absolutely. Day to day. So it's nice to be flexible, and it's great that you have both in-person programs and virtual programs. I think we're going to need both going forward. But the programs you do, the keeper program and everything you do with outreach and so forth, it's a nice model for other organizations.
Yes.
And it's a real pleasure talking with you again today, Laurie. I want to thank you and everybody at Tawas Point Lighthouse for being a lighthouse, for being lighthouses themselves. You and your volunteers and everybody for being lighthouses in the community. Thank you for that. Thank you so much, Laurie. Great talking with you again.
Thank you, Jeremy. Good to talk to you again.
We'll be sending a Be a Lighthouse Award to Tawas Point Lighthouse. Thanks to Laurie Perkins and Terry and Jeri Cole for today's interviews.
Thanks as always to the U.S. Lighthouse Society and its affiliates and chapters. Visit uslhs.org to learn more about everything the Society offers, including tours, preservation grants, and the Lighthouse Passport Program.
I just want to say we're sending our love and wishes for peace to the people of Ukraine. And I should mention we're actually recording this on March 2nd. And hopefully by the time people are hearing this, the situation will be better than it is right now.
I hope so too. I'm gonna let it shine. The author E.B. White once wrote, and I quote, "I would really rather feel bad in the state of Maine than good anywhere else, end quote.
To all our faithful listeners and to our new ones, thanks for listening and
keep a good light.
I'm gonna let it shine. All in my house, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine.